Well, good morning and welcome to SBConnect, where we connect to and educate for the world of work. Today, we have Michael Tamayo, banker from Wells Fargo, who is going to speak on you and your money. This month is actually Financial Literacy Month. And so he's going to take you through the ins and outs of how you can actually save your money wisely and be a wise consumer, and how currencies are actually created. So again, without further ado, Mr. Michael Tamayo from Wells Fargo Bank. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much, Mr. Richards, for the introduction, and good morning to everybody. I know this is a little bit different than we've done it in years past, but for the past couple of years, this has been life for a lot of you out there. So just happy we have the ability and technology now to connect even at this remote level. And like he said, my name is Michael Tamayo. I'm a senior branch premier banker at the Wells Fargo location in Menifee, California. I've been in that role with Wells Fargo now for about 2 years and with the company for about 7. My personal journey, I went to school up at Cal State Monterey Bay for accounting. Spent some time working at a company that sold underwater photo and video equipment. And then had the chance to come over to Wells Fargo as a financial advisor in training. So I was helping clients manage their money, handle investments, and did that for a few years. Moved down here to South Riverside County in the city of Winchester, and have been with the bank now for 2 years as a premier banker. So my role at the bank is to help clients be in the correct products, look for additional opportunities for investing and home lending, and just overall help them get a grasp on their finances and find out, what is money, how is it working for them, and how can it work out a little bit better. And a big portion of that is, getting to the root of what is your money. How do we define what currency is? Where does it come from? More than that, when we put everything down on paper, when we really look at what wealth is, you may see somebody with $1 million home and think to yourself, my goodness, they must be rich, but that's an asset. The question is, what does their liability for that look like? So what we're going to discuss a little bit today is, where does currency come from? Who creates it? How is it managed? And how can you keep your guys on track for success as you get older and start to have more financial goals? So to do that, we're going to use our hands-on banking program. I'm going to open us up. We're going to watch a couple little videos and go over and explain that a little bit more in depth. And then we'll open up for a Q&A at the end of the session. So let's go ahead and we'll start here.
Hi, I'm Angie.
And I'm Alex.
To me, money is so cool. When I have money, I like what I can do with it. The problem is, money just seems to disappear the minute I get it.
So, want to make the most of your money? Want to learn the secret to buying what you need or want and having money left over to save? Well, it might seem tough, but really, you can. With the hands-on banking program, you'll see how banks can help you every step of the way.
First, in You and Your Money, you'll find out where money comes from and how it measures value. You'll see what goes on in a bank and how banks help you manage your money. Plus, you'll see how you can make more money by increasing your earning power.
Ever wonder where your money goes? In budgeting, you'll learn how to make your dollars go farther. Putting yourself in control of your money is a smart way to help you get what you want, faster.
Ever thought about having a savings account? And in the future, a checking account? In savings and checking, you'll see how these bank products can help you save your money and pay for things.
In Credit and You, you'll find out how credit cards and loans can help you get money fast. But the trick is, you've got to pay it back.
Now imagine your money multiplying. It can. Learn the first steps to take in smart investing.
In Assessment, you'll put it all together as you try some real-life money-based problems. You'll even get a certificate when you're done. Proof that you've got your hands on the situation.
All right, so that's a quick introduction to what we'll be discussing today. And we'll go to our next section, which is You and Your Money.
So you're here to take charge of your money, right? In this lesson, we're going to take a look at money itself, hard currency. Where does it come from? What do banks do with money, especially your money? We'll also look at the concept of value, how value is a good way to decide whether you want to buy something or not. Finally, we'll look at what we can do now to earn more money later. More money? Now that's worth waiting for. So let's get started.
Okay, and on to the next section here. Talk a little bit about money and where does it come from?
Aside from being fun to have, money helps you get through everyday life. Money is how we measure value. And the cash and coins, also called currency, are what we use every day to pay for goods and services. Most countries have their own currency. In North America alone, there's the Canadian dollar in Canada, the US dollar in the US, and in Mexico, the peso. Ever wonder where all those coins and bills come from in the US? Well, it's created, or minted, by the Treasury of the federal government. The Treasury carefully controls how many dollars and coins are distributed. When you think about it, money is the glue that binds products, services, and people together in our economy. The engine of the economy runs on the things and ideas people create, but money is what allows people to create and then buy those creations. Money moves through lots of hands in the economy. As you'll see next, money moves in sort of a circle, and it always passes through banks.
So I'll stop there for just a moment. A lot of people ask, well, what is money? Why do we need money? Hundreds and thousands of years ago, we still traded goods and services, but we used to use shells or beads or other items of value. And the difficult part was in one section of the world, a couple shells or a couple beads may buy what you need, but perhaps it was different elsewhere. So centralized currency helps to solidify an exchange of goods and services for a dollar amount that you can depend on. I know some of you out there are looking and asking questions about, well, how does cryptocurrency come into play and things like that? This lesson plan will not touch on that very much at all, if at any, because that's a whole separate can of worms as things progress. But we'll jump into the next section here and see how does what we know as fiat currency go through the economy.
Maybe you've heard the expression, money makes the world go round. Well, that pretty much describes the way money moves in society, sort of in a circle. Check this out. Money gets to the bank from lots of sources. First, we know it starts at the Treasury, which keeps banks supplied with the money they need for their customers. But there's also money that's already in the economy. You know, money from other sources, such as individuals and businesses. That money also goes to banks. So you see how money gets to the bank, leaves the bank, goes through the economy, and then returns again to the bank. Money recycles. Let's say your grandmother gives you $20 for your birthday, and you decide to keep it safe at the bank, in an account. The bank then pays you to keep your money in that account. It's called interest. It's like getting something for nothing. We'll explore the wonderful world of interest and savings accounts later. For now, let's look at what happens with the money in your account. Introducing Mr. X, who comes to the bank for a loan to buy a car. He's a good customer because he watches his money carefully. The bank is sure he'll repay his loan, and they give him one. Mr. X is a happy customer. Your money, and money from lots of other bank customers, gets paid to Mr. X in the form of a car loan. If anyone has ever given you a loan, chances are you repaid them what you owed them, right? Well, maybe. But when banks lend you money, you have to repay them with even more money. Mr. X will have to pay every penny back. Plus, he'll have to pay interest. There's that word interest again. That's right. Interest works both ways. You earn it if you're saving money, and you pay it if you're borrowing money. So Mr. X now pays the car dealer for his new car. On his way home, Mr. X fills up the tank at the gas station and then buys some car supplies. With each purchase, Mr. X's money changes hands once again. The gasoline and car supply merchants use Mr. X's money to pay their expenses and their workers' paychecks. And then, of course, everyone takes their money, once again, back to the bank. Mr. X's money has gone full circle.
So there's a quick little primer on what happens to actual dollars, where they come from, where they go to, and a practical example of how you have money in your pocket and it goes through several other people's and through several institutions. And who knows, maybe it'll end up back to you after a few years. So here's a little bit on what banks and you have to do with your money.
Now that you've seen the role of banks, do you see why they're almost everywhere? Things just can't get done without them. But what about you? How do banks help you? First, banks keep your money safe. They set you up with accounts, like a savings account for keeping your money safe and making it grow with interest. Banks also set up checking accounts, usually for adults over 18, so they can pay for, say, groceries or bills using paper checks, not cash. We'll learn more about checks in savings and checking. Another way banks help you is by giving you a loan for expensive things, like cars. When people get loans from the bank, they're using everyone's money, so each borrower has a big responsibility to pay back the loan. Plus, they pay interest back to the bank. Pay interest? That's right. We'll get into that in a few minutes. Another way banks can help you is by issuing you a credit card. Credit cards are like loans, but you may pay a higher interest rate for them. And with credit cards, you can also buy many different things. With loans, generally they're used to buy one thing in particular. And finally, if you want to see your money grow over time, say for college, banks can help you with investment accounts. We'll look into those in smart investing.
All right, so let's take a look at what money means in the context of loans. And remember, a lot of these things that banks offer in general with financial planning, they're different tools. Each one has a pro and a con and a specific time to use it. So for some people, they may have a credit card with the $50,000 limit, but at 17 or 18% interest, it wouldn't make sense for them to purchase a car with it necessarily. But it's always good to look at your options and make sure that you're comparing so that you're getting the best deal possible and you fully understand the total price that you'll pay over time for that purchase.
Once you're set up with accounts at a bank, how do you get to your money so you can use it? How do you give the bank even more money if you want to? And then, how do you keep track of it? Banks are there to help you. They've made it easy. For example, they've made it convenient to get your money 24 hours a day. You can get cash, add cash or checks, and transfer money between accounts, either at a bank, over the phone, at an automated teller machine, or ATM for short, even at banks located in some grocery stores. No matter how you access your money, banks make it easy to see where your money is and how much you have. They make it easy to be a good money manager.
All right, so let's take a look. Nowadays, I know we all have mobile phones, we all have the internet, so we have more ways than ever to check in on our balances and make sure that we're on schedule and on track for whatever we have planned. So if you have a savings account and you're trying to save $10 every week from whatever chores or babysitting jobs you have, that's a good way to keep track to your goal. You also want to make sure that your accounts haven't been compromised and you can keep yourself to a budget. So for those of you that are a little bit older and have checking accounts and you're using those when you go out, using your debit card to make purchases, it's always good to double check that what you were charged reflects what you actually purchased. 20, 30 years ago, people used to have to look at their check registers and they'd verify that the check they wrote had been cashed for the amount they said it should be. Nowadays, I still have clients that choose to do that, but electronically, it's a lot quicker and a lot faster to verify where you are with your finances.
So let's get back to what we all want. Money. Do you save it? Do you spend it the minute you get it? I don't know about you, but when I really want something, it's hard not to spend it and spend it fast. So I try to spend my money on what I really want, like going out with my friends. To me, that has value. I try not to buy snacks so I can save for the movies or for shopping with my friends. I give up some things to get other things. To me, that's important. Another way to look at value is through its price tag. Have you ever noticed that the same item can cost more or less depending on where you buy it? Do you shop around until you get the best deal? Well, I know it really pays to look around and find out if you can get better value for your money. Your money will go further, so you'll have more money in your pocket for other things.
So when we talk about value and comparing value, I'll give you a little lesson that I've learned from some of my wealthiest clients. You don't get rich by spending rich. So there's always time to look for those values and deals and make sure that whatever you're purchasing is worth the money you're going to be spending on it. Now, sometimes it's unavoidable and we have things we have to spend money on, like a car repair that we may not want to, but we know we need to for transportation. For other things, maybe it's worth time to save up money instead of putting it on a credit card. It all is about actually looking at what you're purchasing, where you are with your financial plan, and making sure that those numbers line up. Where you get into troubles when you're overextending yourself a little bit, and that can be for just a series of small purchases or maybe a large purchase. So setting yourself up now for future success is really important.
Now comes the big question. How can you, a teenager like me, make more money? Sure, it's great to earn allowance or babysitting money now. But what about when we're older? How do we increase our earning power? It's a fact. People with higher education and more skills earn more money on the job than those with less education and fewer skills. So start planning now. Education will be the most important factor, but your skills will matter a lot too. Like skills in computers or languages or math and science or writing. One reason I'm saving for a computer is so I can develop really strong computer skills. They'll be useful no matter what field I eventually get into. So start boosting your earning power now. Get education and skills on your side. It will pay off.
And I'm sure your teachers can attest to this. The world is changing. So over time, education has always mattered. And the more you can expose yourself to new ideas and practice and learn, the better off you'll be. But like it was mentioned, skills are also very, very important. So you want to find out what your drive is, what your focus is, and then excel at it. Do whatever you can to make yourself stand out in that. So if you want to be a computer engineer, find out what's necessary, what skills are required, what coding languages you need to learn, and then be the best at it. If you want to be a welder, find out what's the most important type of welding to learn, whether that's going to be a MIG, a TIG, whether you want to be someone that's working in the aerospace industry. Find out what it is you want to do and really excel at it. And that's going to set you up for future success.
As you can see, if you use the bank like a tool, managing your money is actually very simple. Lots of people use banks, and the money that flows in and out of banks makes a lot of things possible, like paychecks, homes, computers, tuition payments, and even something as simple as a movie ticket. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this unit. We've learned a lot about money. Aside from that, it's really fun to have.
All right, so we'll come to the conclusion now, and we'll do another little mini lesson here. So let me go ahead and stop sharing the screen for us. And then I can see you guys here, and I know everybody, are you able to raise your hands if I ask you all a group question? Let's take, okay, I see
Yes.
Mandy there, so perfect. So they do have the capability. Good, good, good. So right now, out of the group here, and I know we opened it up for middle school and high schoolers, but we'll talk a little bit about the time value of money and a hot topic right now, which is inflation, because I know for a lot of you, if any of you, how many of you drive your cars to school? Okay, yeah, I put my hand up as well. So definitely have noticed an increase of cost of gas at the pump. Now, some of that is from inflationary pressure. Just to give a quick little primer on inflation and really how we control it here in the States, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw interest rates drop to historical lows. And part of that is to help spur the economy. So a lot of what the Fed does in regards to inflation, they control it through the cost of loaning money to the banks. So when they lowered the cost of borrowing money, the banks like Wells Fargo can borrow money from the government at a very low rate, and then they loan it out via usually mortgage loans, business loans, and things like that. Now, if you do that for too long, or in the case of the pandemic, as long as it took us to get to a safer level, you have a little bit of an inflation. Now, to slow inflation, when money is so cheap and it floods the market, they start to raise the interest rate, which is what they've agreed upon this year and they've already started to do. And that trickle-down effect happens in almost everything that you see. So the price of goods will start to increase, and it will increase at different levels. So the consumer price index covers milk and bread and consumer goods and staples. So When you go to the grocery store, you may notice that some of the purchases you're making, or hear your parents talk about some of the purchases they're making, have gone up in value. So what we always want to make sure is that we're saving, and whatever we're doing as far as our finances on our personal side makes sense for the long haul. So a lot of you maybe have college aspirations, maybe you've been saving money for some time. $100 today will be worth less than $100 10 years from now. So what the planning portion of your finances is helping make sure that the $100 you have today is worth at least $100 in 10 years from now money. And we do that through a variety of opportunities. So savings accounts will pay interest. There are things like certificates of deposit. And for some people, they choose to look for other investments, including annuities and stock market investments. All of that has pros and cons, risks and reward. But ultimately, what you want to do is find out as much information as you can about where you are now and set some quantifiable goals. And that's really important when it comes to financial planning and your spending. As you're starting to get jobs and as you're starting to pay more and more of your bills, and eventually you get to the adult part where it's not as fun and a lot more of your money goes to bills than you'd like, what you want to do is try to put that down on paper and use the planning tools that you have available to really determine what your cash flow is. So a lot of people can't really tell you, hey, how much do I spend each month total? How much do I have to borrow each month, whether that's through a line of credit, through their credit cards? Where are they at the end of the month? And the easiest way to think about it is, if I look at the month of April, from April 1st through April 30th, come May 1st, am I going to have money left over, or am I going to owe a credit card money? And if you end up owing the credit card money, ask yourself, what could I change for the month of May so that I have a little bit left over at the end of May? And then at the end of May, reevaluate. And you want to make sure that you're putting away money as much as possible for your future retirements and future endeavors that may be very important to you, such as purchasing a home down the road, maybe a new car, college tuition. I promise you, the list of things to purchase are endless. So the better you plan now, the better you'll be in the future. And with that, I'll open it up to some questions. Mr. Richards, do you have anything you'd like me to touch on before we go to the Q&A?
Well, let's prepare our students for Q&A. So what I'll do is I'll ask you to go ahead and place those questions in the chat room. And so I'll start off with one question now as we receive those questions in the chat room. What place does gold, silver, and metals have in the strength of the US dollar?
So a lot of times what you used to hear about was the gold standard. And if you've ever heard about Fort Knox, it contained enough gold to back the dollars that we had in currency. So if there was, for example, $5 trillion of US currency out there, there was $5 trillion of gold to back that up. We've gone away from that. So we've gone off the gold standard. And now currency is worth whatever value people place on it, which is a little bit of an interesting concept because it doesn't mean X amount of gold or X amount of silver. Now, precious metals do have their place in backing the value of the currency. In other countries, especially war-torn countries, think post-World War II Germany, you had things like hyperinflation where they had to have a wheelbarrow full of money to buy a loaf of bread. United States hasn't had that. We do have quite a bit of valuable assets backing ours, but really the value of the currency is in the strength of the country that backs it. So we've been able to move off of that standard a little bit because the United States is such a strong, robust country. We have a very robust economy. Our stock market, our bond market, those markets are very, very desirable worldwide. And in regards to inflation, that's another reason we want to make sure that our economy stays so strong so that people who want to purchase our US Treasury bonds, they see value and they know that, hey, if I buy this now, when it's set to mature in 10, 15, 30 years, whatever that may be, I know those funds will be available at that time.
Thank you for that question. Again, please go ahead and students post your questions for Mr. Tamayo as I receive them. I will go ahead and ask them. Our next question, what is the greatest threat to the existence of our US dollar today?
So like, most things that come up, it's really, will the United States be able to back our economy so that the dollar remains consistent? That's why the feds, when they meet, they have their meetings. How are we going to raise interest rates? How will we lower interest rates? It's really about trying to control that. So the biggest threat, of course, is if our bonds, our treasury bonds, become undesirable to foreign countries. You may have heard a lot of people say, well, China owns a lot of the US. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're buying bonds, they're paying debt servicing on that. So we're getting money now, and then we'll have to pay it back at a later time. So really keeping the economy as robust as possible will help keep that currency at a very dependable and desirable level. Because if inflation goes up too much, or if you have deflation, which is actually where a dollar today becomes worth twice what it is tomorrow, invert that. A dollar today becomes worth twice tomorrow. You're going to find yourself in exactly the opposite situation where people can no longer afford our international purchases and sales. So domestic, your GDP, your international, those things all come into play as well.
Wonderful. We have another question from Norma. What is your opinion about virtual currency?
Well, I knew we wouldn't get through this conversation without touching on this. So I can let you know whenever it comes to currency of any kind. So when you're looking at people who do currency trading on the market, whether that's, buying yen, buying doubloons, if it was still around, whatever it is, the price in exchange rate today versus tomorrow versus 10 years from now is always going to be a little bit more speculative. So, as an investment, you're always going to find yourself asking questions like, well, do I think it's going to move up? I'll start with Bitcoin. The joke about Bitcoin was 10 years ago when it was coming out, you could go to a cafe in Portland to buy yourself a coffee for a Bitcoin. And, not too long ago, that same Bitcoin was worth $65,000. So there's no rational reason that should have happened, but that's what you get with speculative currency trading. Now, what we are seeing more and more of is with cryptocurrencies and other decentralized virtual currencies, people are starting to feel the pressure of what happens when I can't go to somebody when there's an issue, when my wallet gets hijacked, when I send the money to the wrong wallet, those kinds of things. There are no fail safes. So people get a little more concerned about that. But as far as being able to transfer money virtually, I think we all have, if we have through our banks, we have Zelle, which is a great way to move money between people. We have Venmo, Cash App. I know individual apps and, video game platforms, they have their own kind of virtual currency. So at the end of the day, what it usually comes back to, and even with Bitcoin, people talk about how much US dollars do I have with Bitcoin? They're not necessarily discussing the coins because for them, it's not a tangible thing. So with cryptocurrencies, your virtual currencies, a lot of times, as long as they can have a consistent market to convert them back to cash, you'll find some value in those.
Thank you. We have enough time for two more questions. We have another question coming in from Giselle. Well, you did touch on that. It was about how it works, but let's talk about this. Let's go this question. What is the most powerful world currency behind the US dollar?
Ooh, I'm not prepared for that one. Let's see. I'm going to be honest. I would have to Google it so I don't tell you the wrong answer. But just guessing in today's market, let's see here. I'm going to say China. I'm going to check it right now. And this is something we joke about now. You guys don't know how good you have it. You never have to wait for an answer. You can always find someone out there to have the answer for you. Let's take a look. It actually shows, and it may just be different ways of ranking it, but I show the Kuwaiti dinar is actually the #1 currency. And they may be using some kind of metric, which is basically how many of theirs will compare. But I would guess China right now, as far as a lot of that just comes from their growth. And you'll see that countries out there, as they do more and more business and they have more and more of a market. Let's see, Michael Yu says English pound. Is it a gotcha question, Mr. Richards? Do you have the answer for me?
Like you said, I believe it depends on, the climate of the economic climate at the time. It was just a question that we had a curious participant wondering, not a gotcha question.
Oh.
We do have time for another question, okay? And then we'll go ahead and end. What is the economic impact when our leaders continue to print money knowing we have a growing national debt?
So this is one of those questions that has an answer that's heavily influenced by politics. We have a joke. It's not about how fast the car is going, it's how quickly it has to stop. So when you're looking at what a national debt means, the strength of the US economy is that other countries know we're going to pay that debt. Now, if you continue to just print money and run the debt and print money and run the debt, eventually you're going to find yourself where you can no longer pay what they call debt servicing. So, for example, we may issue, $100 million worth of new issue bonds because people will buy those bonds from the government and they'll give money, and we use that money to pay our old bonds. So as long as you can continue that debt servicing and our economy is strong enough to continue to pay basically the interest on the loan, and other countries can depend on that interest rate and it's attractive to other countries, we'll be in a situation where we can weather the storm. Now, long term, you can't do that every single year. If you're running in a deficit for years and years and years, you find yourself in a situation where you'll have the hyperinflation, which is we've printed so much money, it's truly worthless. We can no longer afford to use this money within the economy. But when it comes to US spending, we do run the deficit up some years, other years it shrinks. But more importantly, it depends on what we're investing in within the country. So a lot of that is through domestic growth. And as long as we're growing as a country in those metrics, we'll continue to be able to print money in the near term. But, some years we'll want to tone it back in a little bit more. And we're always going to try to keep that inflation in check to some degree.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Mr. Tamayo, what would you like to leave with our audience before we close today?
The biggest thing I can tell you, and this comes from a personal outlook, this comes from me and my professional career. Right now, we have more tools than we've ever had at our disposal to monitor our finances, to set ourselves up with a financial goal, and to really make sure that we're reaching it. I know personally on the Wells Fargo side, if you open up your wellsfargo.com, you log in, they have a whole host of, a whole suite of software within it that you can really drill down a budget. And no matter how simple your budget starts out, it's always good to get into the practice of understanding what your finances are. Maybe you're lucky enough not to have any bills. Maybe it's all fun money. Pay yourself first, build your savings account, build your retirement accounts as much as you can, because we never know what the future is going to hold, but it's probably going to be expensive. So definitely the more knowledge you can have, the more tools at your disposal, learn them, use them, really get yourselves into good habits now, because as life gets a little more complicated, a little more complex, you're going to appreciate the groundwork you put in now and be years ahead of your colleagues.
Well, Mr. Tamayo, we want to say thank you from the Alliance for Education for presenting such a great session during this Financial Literacy Month. To all of our participants all over the Inland Empire, we hope you enjoyed this session. Please go to sbcalliance.org, where you can find out where we are going to connect you with the world of work. Educators, please look for your inbox so you can respond to our session today with a video ask that will ask you how well we did today and how well we served your needs in this Financial Literacy Month session. So again, thank you for your wonderful presentation, Mr. Tamayo, and all those schools all over the Inland Empire. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining this morning. You all take care.